Billions of people have read it, memorized it, shaped their lives according to it. But something is missing inside that book. Something huge. Think about it for a second. Count the prophets in the Bible: Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, Elijah, Jeremiah, John. All of them are men, always men. So were there never any female prophets? None at all? Millions of women lived throughout history. They prayed, they believed, they said they heard the voice of God, but they are not in the Bible. Or were they erased? Today, we are chasing the answer to this question, and what we found will shock you to your core. First, I need to say this. There are female prophets in the Bible. Yes, they exist, but nobody talks about it. Open the book of Exodus, chapter 15, verse 20. Then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand. Stop. Miriam the prophet. The Bible explicitly defines her as a prophet, Moses' sister, a woman who played a major role in that great journey leading Israel out of Egypt. But in how many sermons do you ever hear Miriam's name? Keep going. The book of Judges, chapter 4, verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. Deborah the prophet, not just a prophet, also a judge, meaning a ruler, a leader, the woman who governed Israel. Keep going. The book of Kings, chapter 22. King Josiah needs to make a crucial decision. He sends his advisors. And who do the advisors go to? Huldah, the prophet, to a woman. For the most important religious decision of the era, the king of Israel's advisors go to a female prophet. These are written in the Bible that everyone reads and skips over. So we have to ask this question: why does nobody talk about it? What we just learned shows us this. The Bible does not completely ignore female prophets, but there is something else, something much bigger. Names that are not in the Bible's current form, but should be. And the traces of these names still remain in early Christian texts. Mary Magdalene. You have probably heard this name, but likely in the wrong context. For centuries, the church defined her as a sinful woman, a repentant prostitute. This image became so deeply embedded that whenever you hear her name, this is what comes to mind. But where did this definition come from? There is not a single line in the Bible stating that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Not a single line. This definition originated from a sermon by Pope Gregory in the year 591 AD. The Pope identified the sinful woman in the Gospel of Luke and Mary Magdalene as the same person. He confused two different women, and this mistake lasted for centuries. The Vatican officially accepted this error in 1969. In other words, for 1,378 years, Mary Magdalene was defined as something she was not. So, who was she in reality? When looking at early Christian texts, a very different picture emerges. The year 1945. A farmer digging the soil in the Nag Hammadi region of Egypt finds a large jar. Inside, there are 13 leather-bound volumes. These are early Christian texts that were not accepted by the church, rejected, and banned. And among them is the Gospel of Mary. In this text, Mary Magdalene is defined as Jesus' closest disciple. Not just a disciple, but as the person who understood Jesus' teachings in the deepest way. There is a scene in the text like this. After Jesus dies, the disciples do not know what to do. They are afraid, on the verge of scattering. And Mary stands up. She shares Jesus' teachings with them. She unites them. She encourages them. Peter objects. Did Jesus really share these secrets with a woman? And Levi answers, yes, because Jesus loved her more than us. This text was not included in the Bible. Why? Now we come to the real question. Why were these texts excluded? Why were these names pushed into the background? The answer takes us to the most critical period of early Christian history, the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. After Jesus' death, Christianity spreads rapidly, but at the same time, it splinters. There are dozens of different Christian communities. Everyone has different texts, different beliefs, different leaders. And in some of these communities, women play an active role. They teach, they baptize, they govern communities, they prophesy. But some communities oppose this. There is a verse in Paul's letters, 1 Corinthians 14:34. Women should remain silent in the churches. And 1 Timothy 2:12. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. For centuries, these verses became the justification for keeping women away from religious leadership roles. But there is something very interesting here. Textual scholars believe that some of these verses were not written by Paul. They say they might have been added later, especially 1 Corinthians 14:34-35. These two verses disrupt the flow of the text. They do not match the context. It looks as if they were inserted from the outside. If these verses were added later, then we have to ask this question: who added them and why? Now take a step back. This story is not unique just to the Bible. In every period of history, in every culture, female religious figures existed first, then they were erased, then they were forgotten. In ancient Greece, the oracle priests at Delphi were women. These women, called Pythia, conveyed the voice of God. For centuries, the most important religious authority in Greece was a woman. In Mesopotamia, the high priestesses of the Inanna temples were women. These women held both religious and political power. In Egypt, Hatshepsut became pharaoh, but after her death, her name was chipped away from the temples. Her statues were destroyed. They ensured that history would no longer mention her name after a certain point. Chipping away, erasing, making people forget. The same pattern, different cultures, different centuries, and every time the same result. The voice of the woman remained outside of history. Coincidence? Or was this erasure intentional? We saw a lot today. In the Bible, Miriam, Deborah, and Huldah are explicitly mentioned as prophets. Mary Magdalene was misidentified for 1,378 years. The Vatican accepted this in 1969. In the Gospel of Mary, found in Nag Hammadi, she is described as Jesus's closest and deepest disciple. And some researchers say that those verses silencing women might have been added later. Now, I am asking you a single question. If these names had not been erased, would Christianity be different today? Write your answer in the comments. I am truly curious. And let me tell you this question leads you to a much deeper topic, because it is not just names that were erased. In the next video, we will tackle the topic, why did the Vatican lock these documents for 500 years? Subscribe now so you do not miss it.